So I said to her, look, I've paid for a service. If that involves a Mars bar and a wet herring, then that's my kind of choice, isn't it? It's not my fault you haven't got a visa machine.
Then, we're bloody recording.
Oh, what? Hello, this is, as you know, because it said it already, it's Werewolf the podcast. Hello, don't just ignore everything that was said there, it's all done in jest. We'd like to highlight that Grendel Press, our partner, are now releasing their own podcast called Sinister Soup. Grendel Press, as usual, being ahead of the curve in all the horror fiction stuff. What they've decided to do is to celebrate lots of dark fiction, offering like a second life to reprints and, often rejected yet polished tales that deserve to be heard. So we'll leave a link down in the what's it called? A description, and you can just go through and listen to Sinister Soup anytime you want. I've listened to a couple; they're actually really, really good. So give them a go and see how it goes, and enjoy. That was fucking embarrassing. What did anyone say? Why?
Foxglove. Find it! This is my chance to make it finally into the big leagues. Fuck a few hundred humans and drug dealing. I could become the ultimate, a god, a goddamn God. I could show the world that fairies should be respected. Well, if I can find it. I know the aristocratic bastard has it here. He drank from it. He would not have left a fucking thing like that where it was. It has to be here. But where? Fucking find it! I demand as I send a blistering blast of magic. Oh no, I don't! I point my finger and describe the spell term in my head, and a little boot. Yes, a little boot of glitter boots from my pointed index digit. I kept forgetting how good the professor was at this type of thing, and keep forgetting that he had stopped the use of magic for anyone but him and his here. He's no fun. Where's the fun in that? Nah, he is not that thoughtful, actually. He probably stops anyone but him from doing the spellies with sparkles. What the fuck now? A fluttering gang of dumb-looking fairies flies up beside me, and one of them volunteers to give me the news by being pushed towards me by the others. It was lovely to see how frightened she was to share it with me, and it was lovely to see that the others were so frightened that they would make her the sacrifice to do it. This was all good and thrilling, although I knew it would be bad news that she was delivering. But we've checked the basement, said the stuttering fairy Daisy with a gulp whilst cowering. Oh, the power I have is intoxicating. I want more. The fear-filled fairies who surrounded her all took the equivalent of a flittering step back. And I yell, I'm not doing well. I need to find this thing before something or someone gets here. This is almost stressful. It's not there, she said apologetically, flinching away from me. I point the finger on my left hand at her. Nothing? Huh? Well, die! And shit, fucking nothing! A poot, yes, of glitter sparkles pathetically into the air from my normally lethal fingertip. Most disappointing, to be frank. What do you want us to do now? The forlorn fairy asks while she checks if she is still alive and fairy-shaped. Fairy Daisy, I would like you to fucking die, I tell her, staring at my finger and giving it a good old shake. But luckily for you, my finger of power is... I stared at what was normally a finger of death. It's only pudding. I gave the finger an evil look just in case I could frighten the finger into making something less pooty and more bang, smash, and crunchy. Ah! So instead, I would like you to go and fuck yourself. In fact, I would like you to fuck everything about you, I told her. The fairy looked confused and scratched its head. She seemed very confused, as though about how she was going to do that. I don't think I can do that, she whinged. Rage fills me. I want to. Suddenly, there is a bunch of screams and a flock of fairies come bolting out of a door from somewhere. I roll my eyes and sigh. Following them, snapping teeth and all, is something that looks like it's lost a bet with a hedgehog and a blender. The terrified fairies fly up the ceiling, screeching and yelling at the thing. Fuck off, I yell at no one in particular. We don't have to be scared of anything anymore. To prove my point, I flew over to it, smiling, whilst the fairies shouted for me to stop. I looked at them with that look. My 8 out of 10 look of shut the fuck up-edness. This creature was roughly the size of an over-caffeinated terrier, and it sported spikes, scales, and a disposition that could curdle milk at 50 paces. It was all yap, 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 and spitty, spitty, spitty. I held its eyes for a moment, and it whined a little and settled, staring right back at me, weighing me up. Ropes of slavers drooled from the thing's mouth. It was incredibly yucky. Sit! I told the creature, and it did with a wag of its tentacle-like tail. I turned towards the fearful, flittering fairies with a look of contempt. See, I spat. I pointed my finger once more at the horrid thing, and another poot. The thing barked its appreciation at the poot of sparkles. Turning back to the spiky, scaly thing, I circled my hand in front of its nose, and it rolled over like a good boy, good girl. Good it? I mean, it was pretty well trained, whatever it is. The fairies descended, looking at me in awe. It's got a collar on its neck, I tell them. I think it was a neck. It was a gap between its body and its head. I tickled it under the scaly chin and then reached for the tag that was hanging from the baby blue colored collar. You gotta be fucking me. Dave, I said. Fuck's sake. A name ruined for me. Hi, Dave, I said to him. And it wagged its tentacle-like tail. There were many ahs from the fawning fairies in the room now. Peace. I looked at them in disgust. What the fuck are you still doing here? I yelled. I could not control my anger. Go find the fucking holy fucking grail! Dave, fetch the grail. Come on, Dave. Go fetch!
read by the narrator, because we actually put a mute character in our fictional series, which is a bit mad in it, so I've got to read it for her. Sorry. I had been transported to the gateway at the start of the private road to the manor. The gatehouse was lit, but I wouldn't disturb Thompson. What? Sorry? What? Who is Thompson? Why do you want to know who Thompson is? He's got real no relevance to the story apart from the fact that he's in his house at the moment. What? Why did I mention him then? Why did I mention if he wasn't going to be a significant part of the story? I don't know. Look, do me a favour and shut up. I don't have time to talk about Thompson. Okay. Thompson is the retired gamekeeper of the estate. He is old and the rest. I don't care. Can I get back to it now? Cheers. It was a dark night, which was fine. I could see. I'm a cat. The rain was cold and steady. Well, that could go fuck itself. I'm a cat. The moon was full and white behind the clouds, and sometimes it broke through them, giving me moments where I would be a shadow. Not a problem, because I'm a cat. Something small ran through the bush. I almost chased it, but need to keep my mind on the important thing. Yeah? See, that was pretty impressive for a cat, wasn't it? I was the only one that could do anything about the problem at the manor. As per usual, they needed a cat. It would be a disaster if I did not get there in time. See, that may be an issue. The getting there on time thing is difficult for us, because, yeah, I'm a cat. But once again, I was the only thing in between success and the complete failure of this entire operation. I could save it. I could change the future. I could make the difference. I could save my tuna steaks. What? Yeah, the tuna steak. What's the most important thing? Yeah, I'm a cat. Oh, and you can't judge me because I'm a cat, and we will always do the judging. I set off running.
The Professor. She was gone. I cocked the Mozzie shotter, and Geronimo. I charged after her at full steam. I started at a thunderous pace, but soon realized there was no need to get there wheezing when I'd released her to do the business, as it were. Well, I realized, but due to pace and the significant weight I carried, it was the fact that I ended up bent over and gasping for breath just a few yards into my sprint. She was, of course, far more capable than most to do said business. In fact, she was the business, if you could keep her on task, that is. That was somewhat impossible, though. I know what you're thinking. Why have I not been using her as part of my bloody team? Well, the reason is that she's a cat. Let me tell her story as I wander up this meandering lane. I have some time to kill before I kill at the manor. They'd sent me the most morose news from a village that was too small for me to value remembering its name. What was that bloody place called? Never mind. It's utterly of no consequence. Anyway, the news was that livestock had been taken in the night, shredded clean to the bone and hoof, and that the poor bastard who tended them had been left only half alive, babbling about his attacker, and that the attacker was not of a human ilk. In this case, It was also not a wolf nor a bear, but a feral girl, black-haired, a mute child who was as naked as the day she was born. And when she leapt at him, he swore that her body had twisted in mid-air, bones had cracked, and skin had ripped until what landed wasn't human at all. A Vaughnt. Yes, a Vaughnt. An ancient name for an incredibly rare beast. The Werecat. They're far rarer than werewolves and don't suffer the same clumsy fury as lycanthropes. Vaunts are much colder, much more calculated predators. Well, again, I take that back. There's a good variety of werewolves are calculating evil bastards. But she wasn't like them. She was just not so evil, if you can ever say that cats aren't evil. A Vaunt's hunger isn't wild. It's patient. And when a young one first turns, they rarely know the difference between man and beast. That kind of thing has to be taught. You need to teach the big kitty that people are not nom-noms. They do get it eventually. Well, that is after one or two awkward, incidents. So I sharpened my armorer's sword of meteor iron, my old reliable blade, which was more than enough for cutting through curses, even older ones. Packed the silver darts for unlife insurance, readied the old Lancaster rifle, and I was off. Once I arrived, I told myself at this particular point, and the village elders, the same hard truth I'd learned to live by, that there's no cure for what she is. She'd killed already, and she'd kill again. Best I ended quickly and cleanly, before any more of this bloody business continues. There were paws far too large for any ordinary cat, pressed into the snow-soft mud, and once I glimpsed a bare human footprint, which was left oddly alongside them. I followed that path with some unease. This creature would not usually leave such an easy path to read. I may be in for a feline surprise at some point. So as I sniffed the trail, I grew wary in case I was being flanked, or if the beast was going to waylay me in some form of trap. I traveled for many hours through the dense spruce and into the mountains, where the air grew so thin it tasted like iron. The woods were silent. No birds. No chattering insects. Only the heavy hush of an ambush in waiting. And then I found the den. Well, I say a den, but it was a pitiful, dank hole under the bough of a pine tree. Once I'd recognized it for what it was, I took my time and used all my stealth to crawl to the entrance. Then I saw her. My first sight was by moonlight. She was curled up in the hollow of the tree roots, and her black fur was retreating from her skin like morning frost, melting on a sun-kissed stone. She'd become a human of sorts again, but evidently not human enough. Her eyes were closed, and the silence around her was not born of fear. It was respect. The forest knew her, claimed her. I raised my rifle, and then those eyes opened, and she looked at me. Not with rage, not even with animal cunning, but with a kind of hollow, exhausted understanding, as though she'd been waiting for me to end it all along. My trigger finger itched to fire. I knew I had to. I lowered the rifle. I couldn't do it for all my training and all the cases I'd seen. In that moment, I could not shoot that young girl's face. I have to say, it's very unlike me. You see, I've spent lifetimes taking the lives of creatures who never asked for their hunger, their shape, their curse. And lying there with my rifle poised, I realized that the tragedy of these actions wasn't hers alone. It was mine, too. I lay there, looking at her. My rifle was unthought of at my side. I just watched her. The Werecat did not do what was expected. The young Vaughnt didn't bare her fangs, snarl, or lunge as I'd seen her kind do in every other encounter. No. This girl, this creature, just sat there, trembling, wrapped in the cold like an orphaned kitten. And when I stepped closer, her golden eyes widened, not with malice, but with fear. Oh, how could I hurt this? Well, I should. I should release it from its curse, but no. I purposefully showed her my empty hands, a slow, deliberate gesture. Then I sat, cross-legged in the dirt, pulled a strip of beef jerky from my pack, and placed it between us like an offering at an altar. She stared at it, then at me. It took an ungodly number of hours to get her to take the food. The sun had dipped low once again behind the Carpathians, painting the snow in bruised purples and deep blood reds. Slowly, inch by inch, she crawled towards the dried meat, her gaze darting between my face and the jerky, as if weighing which might bite first. As she endeavored to comprehend the situation, she gave me a few warning hisses and bared her fangs a little. But it all seemed somewhat half-hearted and unnecessary on her part. And when finally her small, cold hand snatched it up, I saw that the hunger was not just for food, but for something far, far older, far more fundamental. Safety. Kindness. She'd been starved of these. Hurt by the world. And it showed. She sat shivering, a naked small girl in the cold of the winter. In response, I shrugged off my old army jacket, the same battered old thing I'd worn through half a century of mundane and otherworldly campaigns. It was a good old piece of kit, very well made and very warm. I slipped that beloved jacket around her thin shoulders. As I did so for a moment, the girl became still. She was waiting for me to do the bad thing that I had come here to do. As I tucked her into the jacket, I spoke to her with the warmth of the tone she needed. There you go, my dear. This old thing will have you warm and cozy in just a few moments. You'll have to accept the smell, though, I'm afraid. Been through the wars a little bit, that thing. I sighed to myself as I sat back away from her. Suits you a lot more than myself, I have to say. You look splendid, and you'll soon be splendidly warm, I told her as she smiled. Yes, a smile. It fair made my day, I have to tell you. She now pulled it tight around her and buried her face in the collar like it was the first warmth she'd known. She snuggled in that old thing. And she purred. By crikey, she purred. I left her for some time, hoping she'd warm up and relax, but she never took her eyes off me. Then, without a word, she reached for my hand. It was a bloody moment, by Struth. Now, in the real world, I was a dog person. Spaniels and labs were my breeds of choice, but in this case, I actually felt warmth for a cat. I suppose she wasn't cat-shaped, though. When we walked back into the village, her small fingers were wrapped around my own, and a jerky was clutched in her other hand. The jerky that had to be constantly replaced as she ate it most ravenously. She had quite an appetite, did the little lady. On our return to the little settlement, the people only saw the monster, not the child that I saw. It was painful to me. I will not go into too much detail about their response to us, but the beast was not this girl holding my hand. I mean, even with her almond eyes, her dark hair, and the worn military coat swallowing her thin frame, they felt utterly terrified of her. It just wasn't right. Of course, the local priest was first to speak. They think they're the experts in this field when, really, well, I'll leave that to you to contemplate who the expert might be.
Beware and back, ye demon of the underworld,
he said, raising his iron cross like it would somehow shield him from the sight of her. The Vaunt's reaction was to look at me for reassurance, and then keep chewing on her jerky while she observed the silly man in his dress. At this point, the villagers had closed ranks, faces pale, their fear painting them rather ugly. They didn't shout, well, not at first anyway. They whispered, their words sharper than blades. Demon, witch, shapeshifter. As they came forward, I pulled the girl behind me. Now, you chaps will have to come through me to get to this poor, child, and that would be a bad plan for those of you contemplating the attempt, I told them. When the banishment from the place came, it was delivered not with ceremony, but with cold finality. I, Simon de Montfort, knight, scholar, supernatural expert, and this frightened, half-starved girl were no longer welcome on their soil. I didn't argue. I simply nodded. I turned, and I led her away from the only place she'd likely ever known. I wondered if she'd ever been part of the village. Had she been brought up here and then... I can imagine what The priest and his entourage followed as we crossed the village boundary. The manner of our departure was most vexing to me, but she seemed at ease in my company. She just looked up at me every now and again with a brief smile as we walked, with those almond-coloured eyes, so sharp and so sad all at once. I held her tiny, warm hand and gently squeezed it for reassurance. It gave me somewhat of a paternal feeling to be walking with this child, and it made the world a little less bitter and a little less cruel. And in case you're wondering, this wouldn't be the first time I'd walked away from a place that mistook fear for justice, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. I have, as you know, brought many strange things to England over the centuries. Relics, texts, the odd cursed trinket. But none quite as peculiar or as precarious as Vaughnt. She sat beside me on the long train journey north from Dover to my old manor, wearing that same battered army coat, silent as ever. She made no noise. She moved silently, and never a sound passed her lips. Her pale eyes were fixed on the countryside slipping past. I didn't press her for words. She'd only known fear and survival until now. I certainly had no need to cause her any more discomfort. I would say I needed to develop a rapport with the child, but it was evident that it was there in spades already. Conversation would come in its own time. And it did. I had to teach her British Sign Language first. It was slower than speech, but it suited her quiet nature. Really did, you see. I suppose with being a cat, that her eyes were sharp and always alert to movement. Within weeks, she used it to name things and ask questions. She'd tilt her head at the most abstract of topics, her fingers nimble and expressive, and I soon realized that beneath the fur, the claws, and the wildness lay a mind as precise and hungry as any I'd ever encountered. 6 months later, once Vaughnt had mastered enough sign language and we could truly talk, I finally asked her about the night she'd attacked the man from the village. I'd always suspected there was more to it. Her eyes told me as much the moment I'd met her, but I'd waited until she was ready. When the question was finally asked, she answered without hesitation, her hands moving with sharp, clear certainty. The man, she told me, had first shown her kindness, bringing scraps of food and speaking softly, luring her with a pretense of friendship. But when he thought her trust was won, his intentions turned darker. He tried to hurt her, to force himself on her. She hadn't wanted to hurt him, not at all, only to make him stop. That was all. Her golden eyes were steady as she signed it, without any obvious bitterness or fear. Just the plain truth of it. And in that moment, I understood her entirely. I believed her without question. After all, I've known monsters my whole life, and Vaughnt was never among them. So I hired tutors. Mathematics of all things sang to her. Numbers and patterns came as easily to Vaughnt as shifting from girl to cat. Philosophy spoke to her too. That mischievous little mind of hers adored puzzles with no clear answers. We'd sit for hours by the hearth, the scent of old books and wood smoke filling the room, locked in debate about paradoxes and the nature of existence. She was no longer just a rescued creature. She was, in all the ways that mattered, how do I put this? In a strange way, she had become as dear to me as any daughter ever could. Her shape-shifting, of course, never dulled. With a flicker of motion, one moment she'd be a girl curled in an old leather chair, and the next, a sleek black cat, tail flicking with the cadence of her thoughts. The only thing that ever outpaced her wit was her speed. I've seen werewolves, revenants, even fey hunters move like the wind, but Vaughnt was something way beyond that. Her speed simply can't be measured. Not properly. One moment she stood beside me, the next she was halfway across the manor grounds, perched lazily on the stone wall, like she'd been there for hours. The years passed, and eventually I sent her to Cambridge. The finest tutors, the sharpest minds. I thought perhaps the world could give her a place. But a cat is a cat, even if it can wear a human face. Academia bored her. The walls of the colleges closed in, and that clever, predatory heart of hers grew homesick for the old manor, for the quiet, for the scent of the forest after rain. One rainy afternoon, no more than 2 months into her studies, I returned from London to find her sitting on the kitchen table, nibbling on cold roast beef, that old army coat still wrapped around her shoulders like a second skin. She signed to me, simply, "The numbers are still here, but your roast beef is better." And I couldn't argue with that. She had changed, of course. Time does that to all of us, even to those like Vaughnt, who straddle the line between human and something, older. When she padded back into my life that rainy afternoon, settling onto the kitchen table with the nonchalance only a creature like her could ever muster, it wasn't just her studies she left behind at Cambridge. It was the last traces of that quiet, wild village girl I'd found in the Carpathians. Gone was that simple, long black hair that used to fall across her face like a veil. In its place now stood a stiff, defiant black mohawk, a proud banner that stood a good foot high, lacquered into place with some unholy combination of hairspray and magic. Must be magic. The sides of her head were shaved clean, save for 2 sharp tails of long hair that curled down her like sideburns, like some shadowy adornment from a pagan rite. It was quite a contrast to her image on leaving, I have to tell you. She had, as she signed to me later that evening, become a new wave goth girl. Well, it took me the better part of an hour and a bottle of scotch to fully understand what that meant through our clumsy back-and-forth finger-spelling. Although I have to say the look suited her. Black eyeliner ringed her sharp feline eyes, exaggerating the wildness that was always just beneath the surface. Her lips were painted a deep matte black, and her nails matched. She'd taken to black lace gloves, tight leather trousers, and shirts with cryptic band names scrawled across them. Names I was certain weren't even words in any language I recognized. A walking portrait of the student underground scene, if ever I'd seen one. Now, I know what you're thinking. Me, I, Simon de Montfort, born in the 12th century, a man so thoroughly English and so delightfully antiquated, staring at this creature dressed like some stray from a music video. Must have raised an eyebrow so high it vanished into my hairline. But truth be told, I actually approved. It suited her. It was her. The world had always been too tame for Vaughnt. Even the old world of beasts and shadows could barely keep pace with her. This strange, spiky, inky black armor of style was simply another skin to her, another mask for her to wear as she moved through the human spaces, and I was rather pleased to see she still clung to my battered old army jacket over the ensemble. That beloved little scrap of brown canvas, older than most nations, somehow still fit over her rebellious new plumage and looked cool. If an old duffer like me is allowed to use such a term. As cool. Do you know, she signed something to me later that night as we sat by the fire. "You look old," she teased, her hands moving sharp and quick. "But I still like you." I chuckled, pouring us both a finger of whiskey. "And you," I replied, lifting the glass in her direction. "You look like you've robbed a cemetery and a record store. But I still like you." And we laughed as she pulled a face at the sip we took of the whiskey. As I said right at the start of my monologue, it's funny. Everyone assumes Vaughnt would make a perfect companion for a man like me. A werecat, after all, with her uncanny speed, sharp instincts, and a knack for sniffing out things that don't belong in this world. She seems on paper like the very idea of an assistant for my particular brand of work, the chasing down of things that go bump in the night and occasionally tear a few limbs off in the process. But the truth is, you cannot, and I do stress, cannot work with a werecat. It's not that she's incapable, I mean, she's far from it. I've watched Vaughnt perform feats of agility and perception that would put the most highly trained Special Forces unit to shame. She can track scents days old and spot a lie in a man's heartbeat and move like smoke across rooftops with so much as a whisper. But you see, she is in the end still a cat. And cats, well, cats don't always do as they're told, do they? I've brought her along on precisely 3 field assignments. 3. Each time, the same wretched lesson was hammered back into my thick, immortal skull. Vaughnt does what Vaughnt wants. The first time, in Prague, I had her posted as my lookout while I tried to broker an uneasy truce with a revenant gang that had been haunting the old Jewish quarter. I thought having a werecat perched overhead would keep things civil. Halfway through these tense negotiations, I glanced up to signal her, only to find the spot empty. She'd apparently grown bored and wandered off to chase pigeons through the Charles Bridge markets. I barely got out of that alley with my head attached. The second time was actually worse. On encountering a skinwalker in the Utah desert, I'd brought her along thinking her keen senses and animal instincts might give me the edge. For the first hour, she was as sharp as a tack, her eyes glinting, ears twitching at every desert whisper. But the moment the creature appeared and the real danger began, well, she sat down on a rock and cleaned her paws and looked at me as if to say, "You got yourself into this mess. You get yourself out of it." And the third time, well, let's just say it involved an Irish banshee, a bottle of scotch, and a most dignified sprint of my bloody life. Vaughnt, as it happened, had decided the moonlight that evening was too beautiful to waste on fighting, and she simply went home. Bugger. Learnt my lesson. No matter how clever, no matter how powerful, a werecat isn't a tool to be wielded or a soldier to be ordered. She's a cat. And if the mood doesn't suit her, or if her curiosity is sated and her belly's full, she'll happily leave you to fend for yourself against the gaping maw of whatever eldritch horror you crossed paths with. That's the thing about Vaughnt. I don't own her, and certainly don't command her. She isn't my partner in a professional sense. She's more like, well, she's more like family. Wayward, unpredictable, and maddeningly disloyal to any plan that doesn't entertain her. But family, all the same. Do you know what? Truth be told, I wouldn't have it any other way. But for all the trouble she's been in the field, there's no denying Vaughnt makes this old manor a true home. It's a curious thing, you see. Most people imagine a creature like her, half human, half feline, all wild instinct, would treat her house as just another den, somewhere to eat, sleep, sharpen her claws, and little else. But Vaughnt, my Vaughnt, well, she thinks of this house as hers, entirely, indisputably hers. And because of that, the place is kept in a state of order I never could have managed myself. And she's not doing it out of any form of obligation. I mean, I've never once asked her to clean a thing. She does it because, like any proud creature, she tends to her territory. Every rug is always in place, every curtain dusted and aired, every corner swept, as if her very pride depended upon it. More often than not, my cluttered old papers are neatly stacked when I return from my ramblings. Usually, this means I can't find a bloody thing I need. My teacups vanish to the kitchen the moment I forget them on the side table. And protection? I'll wager you won't find a safer house in the whole country. Supernatural or mundane, nothing with bad intentions gets within a stone's throw of the place. Vaughnt is a sentinel, sharper than any alarm bell or sigil. She knows when something's off long before I do, and woe betide any fool who mistakes this quiet manor for an easy mark. Oh, and rats? No, no rats. Not since the day she arrived. Which of course makes perfect sense. Truth is, after all these years, it doesn't feel like my house anymore. Not really. I mean, I live here, yes. I pay the taxes, I keep the books, warm the hearth. But this place, well, it's hers, you see. And I'm allowed to stay like some tolerated guest or slightly annoying family member who's earned a spot by the fire. Or at least that's how it feels most days. And if I'm honest, I wouldn't have it any other way. And there you have it. That is my Vaughnt. I'd got to the porch of the old pile of a place. I'd be going through the front door. No one ever expects you to go through the front door. The house was already silent, so I knew Vaughnt had probably already happened to whatever had been the issue. I prepared myself for the fight. Oh, this got the blood flowing. An owl hooted in the distance to remind me that whatever happened, this was just an ordinary night for everything and everyone else. I cocked the Mossberg and took a position at the right side of the door. Right, I thought. Kick the door open. Corner check. Move to left wall. On 3. 1, 2, 3. The door opened as I threw my weight at it. This had the effect of making me fall through into as close as I would ever get to the split whilst being in one piece. Vaughnt silently laughed as she stood there. She signed a greeting while I extricated myself from the awkward pile with little grace and yawned and pointed at her wrist where a watch should have been. I got the point. I utterly adored her, but she was utterly annoying at times. She could see that I was somewhat irked and signed back to me, followed by that winky blink of hers. "Well, I am a cat," she said. Then she raised her hand, shrugged, and bowed me from the porch into the hall.